Don't you ever laugh as the hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. They wrap you up in a big white sheet, from your head down to your feet. They put you in a big brown box and cover you up with dirt and rocks. All goes well for about a week. Then your coffin begins to leak. The worms crawl in and the worms crawl out. The worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose. They eat the jelly between your toes. A big green worm with rolling eyes crawls in your stomach and out your eyes. Then pus comes out like whipping cream. You spread that on a slice of bread, and that's what you eat when you are dead. Don't you ever laugh as the hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. Earlier this year, on May 1st, I decided to go down to a place that I had heard was haunted. It was the Gravity Hill in Moreno Valley, just 30 minutes north of Temecula. Now, this hill, it's on Nason Street. You can go there yourself. It's right there on Nason Street by the 67 highway, just north of the overpass. And what they say is that this Gravity Hill, it defies the laws of gravity because of the ghosts that are there. Now, this is the story that I heard about that hill. The story is that a bus driver, a school bus driver, was driving up that hill taking the kids to school years ago. And just as he was heading up that hill, the bus stalled out. Something was wrong with the engine. So he had to park. He had to put on the emergency brake. He told all the kids, just stay inside, stay quiet. And the driver, he got out and he got the hood open and he got his tools out and he got looking under there thinking, okay, maybe this will be an easy fix. And he was looking there so concentrated on what he was doing with the engine that he wasn't even watching inside the bus. And then all of a sudden the bus started to shake. And he said, what's going on? Is this an earthquake? He looked up from the hood and then he saw inside the bus, all of the kids had ran over to one side of the bus. They all ran over to one end and they're all laughing and pointing. And then he went over, looked around the edge of the bus, and there was the boy, the little boy, the class clown, standing in the middle of the street, Nason Street, standing there with his arms outstretched. He's dancing around, making funny faces, and everyone's laughing and cheering him on. And the driver, he shouted out, "Get back in the bus!" And he shouted it. The boy couldn't hear him from all the traffic from the nearby highway under the overpass. And he shouted again, "Get back in!" The boy couldn't hear him. "Get now, move!" And he tried to call out, and it was too late. The car came around the end, didn't even see the boy, ran right over him. So what they say about this hill is that that's why it's haunted. They say that that ghost child, or maybe the ghosts of all those children, are there on that hill. And what they say is if you park your car on that hill, pointing uphill, put it in neutral, that those ghost children, they'll come along and they'll push your car up the hill to get it out of the way, away from that dangerous intersection, that blind spot, and they push your car to safety. That's what they say. Well, I heard this story, but I can't say that it's true. I really hope it's not. It's a tragic story if it is, but I couldn't find any record of it. So I suppose that's good news that this horrible thing, at least on Nason Street in Moreno Valley, 30 minutes north of Temecula, at least in that spot, so maybe that horrible, tragic thing didn't happen to a child after all. What I did find is there are other versions of that story with different people. Some people say it was multiple children who were killed. Some people say it wasn't children at all, that it was just a man driving a truck changing his tire, and a car came around and hit that man, and that man, his ghost, is what pushes your car out of the way. So I don't know, all the stories, it's all muddled. It's really hard to get a bead on what actually happened in this intersection, this supposedly cursed, supposedly haunted intersection. But there's one thing that I knew for sure, one thing I could test, and that was, does this gravity hill actually work? So I went out there this year, in May of this year, with my friend Faith in her car. We drove out there to check it out. Now, there are gravity hills like this all over Southern California. You can go check them out. There's another one near San Diego, just an hour east of San Diego. If you go out to the Incopa exit to the Desert View Tower, right out at the edge of Imperial County line, and if you go to the hill that leads up to that tower, you can see this hill, it's clearly going uphill, but if you put your car in neutral, your car will roll its way up that hill. I've even tried it with a tennis ball. The tennis ball rolls uphill. Some places are just like that. They seem to defy the laws of gravity and physics, and inevitably, in places that are like that, people tell supernatural stories. So my friend Faith and I drove out there. Now, one thing we realized, we stopped at a Target shopping center just away from that gravity hill. And one thing we realized, there's a strange energy about that whole place. There's just an unusual sort of vibe about it. We stopped in that parking lot. We went to use the bathroom, but as we drove into the parking lot, there was a street preacher standing there, had his Bible open in his hand. He was shouting, talking about the devil and hellfire and curses and the end times. The only strange thing was he was standing in the most empty part of the parking lot with no people around him. And my friend Faith and I just kind of looked at each other. We said, "What is there something about this particular spot that just sort of attracts weird energy, unusual people?" As we went to the bathroom and as we left, that man, he was still standing there, shouting to nobody at all. So then we drove around the corner, we drove over the overpass, and then we got to that hill. And we got to exactly where that hill is on Nason Street, where the road is clearly pointing uphill. And Faith she was behind the wheel of the car, and she put it in neutral, and I got out to film it with my cell phone. I stood there and nothing happened for a while, and she said maybe it doesn't work at all, maybe it's just a myth. I said, let's give it a little push. So I pushed on the back bumper of the car, just barely, and then once I did that, though, the car started rolling uphill. And it got a little faster and a little faster as it was moving clearly uphill. Now, before it could get too fast, I ran up and caught up to it, and then I jumped back into the car. And I said, that was very strange. Whatever it is about that place, it works. Those cars seem to roll uphill. Now, maybe it's all just an optical illusion. Maybe it just looks like it's moving uphill, but maybe you actually are pointing downhill. Maybe it's like one of those mystery shacks at carnivals and haunted houses. Maybe it is just an optical illusion. And I never could find any record of the children or the child or the school bus or the man changing his tire there. But what I did find is that there's something about that place, and this is guaranteed, something about that intersection and that hill that seems to just attract disaster, misfortune. And as I was researching it, I found something strange. Just 2 days before Faith and I went there to test the gravity hill in her car, 2 days before we were there were two different accidents on that hill at that very intersection in the same day. The fire department, they got a call from one of the accidents that a car had wrapped itself around a telephone pole nearby, right at that intersection. And when they showed up with the emergency gear, it's a good thing they showed up with all the emergency team, because they found a second accident of two cars that had rammed into each other. Apparently something about that particular hill and that particular spot, it just seems to attract disaster. So what is it? What's happening? Is that place cursed? Is it something that kind of brings tragedy and disaster to itself? Is there some strange, invisible, supernatural power there? Was there a terrible tragedy? Is it haunted? Is there some sort of ghost that is trying to save drivers, or maybe even attracts more disaster, some vengeful ghost? Or is it all backwards? Maybe people realize how dangerous that intersection is, and so we tell these stories as archetypes about places that make us worried for our own safety, the safety of our loved ones, and we tell these stories to remind ourselves to be careful. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, you can go there for yourself. You can go there in your car right on Nason Street before the overpass over the 67 highway in Moreno Valley, California. You can go there, or you can read about it in my upcoming book of Temecula ghost stories. Either way, I suggest try it out for yourself. You might be surprised. But if you do go there, just remember to look both ways first before you get out of the car. Don't you ever laugh as the hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die.